You work your entire life for something that only has value because everyone agrees it does. Take away that agreement, and it becomes worthless paper. So how did we get here? How did humanity go from picking berries to staring at stock tickers? This is the entire history of money. Before money existed, life was simple but brutal. You had something someone else wanted, they had something you needed, you traded, directly. A farmer gives grain, a hunter gives meat. Simple and clean. But there was a problem. What if the hunter wasn't hungry? What if the farmer needed shoes but the cobbler didn't need grain? You were stuck. Economists call this the double coincidence of wants, the near impossible task of finding someone who has exactly what you need and wants exactly what you have at exactly the same time. This is why money was born, not out of greed, out of pure practical frustration. The first things humans used as money weren't coins or paper, they were shells, specifically cowrie shells, small, glossy, almost beautiful. For over 4,000 years across Africa, Asia, and even parts of Europe, cowrie shells were currency. You could trade them, hoard them, carry them in your pocket. But shells weren't the only early money. Across different civilizations, people used cattle, salt, obsidian blades, whale teeth, and enormous stone discs. On the Pacific island of Yap, people used rye stones, some weighing 4 tons. You couldn't exactly carry one to the market, but everyone in the village knew who owned which stone. The ownership was the currency. The physical movement was irrelevant. This is a critical idea, and one that still defines money today. Money is not the object. Money is the agreement. Around 600 BC, in a kingdom called Lydia, modern-day Turkey, something revolutionary happened. King Alyattes created the first standardized metal coins. Made from electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver, these coins had a consistent weight and a royal stamp to prove it. This was a game changer. Suddenly, you didn't need to trust a stranger across a market stall. You trusted the coin. You trusted the king's face stamped into the metal. Trade exploded. Cities grew richer. Empires expanded. Within a few centuries, coins spread across Greece, Persia, India, and China. Each civilization stamped their own symbols of power onto their currency, and every time a new empire rose, they melted down the old coins and stamped new ones. Even back then, whoever controlled the money controlled the world. Carrying metal coins had a serious downside. They were heavy. A wealthy merchant traveling across China with enough coins to fund a business trip could barely walk. So around the 7th century AD, under China's Tang dynasty, merchants began depositing their coins with trusted merchants or government officials. In exchange, they received a paper receipt. That receipt could be exchanged for the coins later. They called it flying money because unlike coins, it could travel lightly. By the Song dynasty, the government formalized this into the world's first official paper currency, the jiaozi. Europe wouldn't catch up for another 500 years. When it did, it didn't go smoothly. Sweden issued copper coins so massive and heavy that people literally collapsed carrying them. Paper money felt like a scam to Europeans raised on metal. The idea that a piece of paper could equal gold felt absurd. Then the banks figured out how to make it compulsory, and suddenly everyone believed. Here is the part that most people never learn in school. Banks don't just store your money, they create it. When a bank gives you a loan, it doesn't pull gold from a vault. It types a number into a computer, or historically wrote it in a ledger, and that number becomes real money. This is called fractional reserve banking. Banks only need to hold a fraction of deposits as actual reserves. The rest they lend out, multiple times over. The Medici family of Renaissance Florence understood this better than anyone. They built one of the first modern banking systems, lending money to kings, popes, and merchants across Europe. They didn't just get rich, they became the financial backbone of an entire civilization. The Renaissance, arguably the greatest artistic and intellectual explosion in human history, was largely bankrolled by a family of clever accountants. Money didn't just buy things, money built civilizations. For most of the 19th and early 20th century, the world ran on the gold standard. Every paper note was backed by a fixed amount of gold sitting in a vault somewhere. You could theoretically walk into a bank and exchange your cash for gold. This kept governments honest. You couldn't just print more money if you didn't have more gold. Then came World War II, and everything broke. Countries printed enormous amounts of money to fund the war. In 1944, the Bretton Woods Agreement tried to patch the system. Every currency would be pegged to the US dollar, and the US dollar would be backed by gold. The world's reserve currency was born. But in 1971, President Nixon did something extraordinary. He simply ended it. The US could no longer honor its gold obligations, so he canceled them. Just like that, the world's money became backed by nothing but trust in governments. Economists call this fiat currency, from the Latin, let it be done. By declaration, the paper in your wallet has value, because we all agreed it does.
Today, most money doesn't physically exist. Over 90% of the world's money is digital. Numbers on screens, signals between computers. When you tap your card at a shop, no money physically moves. Numbers decrease in one database, increase in another. That's it. And then, in 2008, right as the global financial system was collapsing under the weight of its own complexity, someone called Satoshi Nakamoto published a white paper, Bitcoin, a currency backed not by gold, not by a government, not by trust in a bank, but by mathematics. For the first time in history, you could transfer value to anyone, anywhere, without a middleman. Whether Bitcoin becomes the future of money or a historical footnote, it forced the world to ask a question humanity hadn't asked in thousands of years. What does money actually need to be? From cowrie shells on a beach in ancient China, to gold coins in Lydian markets, to paper receipts in Tang Dynasty banks, to numbers on a screen, money has always been the same thing, not a metal, a paper, or a code. An agreement. A shared hallucination that billions of people believe in simultaneously. The most powerful force in human history was never gold, it was trust. And right now, the question of who we trust and with what has never been more uncertain, or more important. If you found this interesting, there's a whole lot more where that came from. Hit subscribe, because the next video might just change how you see the world.